Okay, this is the Natural Resource Inventory and Mapping Committee on the August 20th meeting. With us today are committee members Penny Miller and Ryan Oakes and our guest Jens-Hilke from A&R. Welcome.
Thank you.
So today we're going to be talking about I don't see any public here, so we'll skip the public comment period. And today we're going to be talking about our natural resource inventory report and maps that our contractor Arrowwood has finished. How to look at the information and figure out what is significant. Look at the maps, see how we might roll those out to other committees. I know the Planning Commission and Conservation Commission are very interested in seeing this and using it for their work, and rolling it out to the public so that it is useful to people that want the information, and it's clear so that people understand what it means and what it doesn't mean, and how we plan to use it. In the past, we've talked about how we might want to roll this out, and I'll just start by saying I know we need a public presentation, and my suggestion was to have it be joint for all the committees and public, and at that time really have it focus on the content and the ecology and what the information means, not necessarily what it will lead to in the future, just so that people understand how incredible our resources are, you know.
And that was, I'm trying to remember back, Arrowwood was going to provide that? Or?
Well, we had in mind we would have to have a separate contract for them to do it. Right. Yeah. And the Conservation Commission had said they would have some funds if we wanted to do that. Okay. So I think it would be valuable to have them talk about what they've done, how they've done it, what they think is important. I also think that often Jens can put it into a larger context that maybe they, I don't know, I've never seen their presentations. I don't know if they'll do that sort of thing. But I think, you know, people in Underhill, they want to know how we're connected to the rest of the surroundings, how our wildlife's moving, what's, you know, that sort of thing, and what's here that's unique versus what here that's common in Vermont, but maybe not elsewhere. All of those kind of things that need a little perspective. That's after my thinking.
After reading this, I was in relation to like how we present this, I was thinking that we maybe want to invite like Westford or Stowe, because they did touch several times on like these are the habitat or the forest blocks that are, there's parts in Underhill, but that in no way are they like Underhill's only. They extend
Westford
larger.
Is 6 to 7 times more in Westford.
And the same with Stowe. Like
yeah.
This forest block extends. So maybe their conservation commissions would be interested or invited just to see if, I don't know what any of those towns have done as far as similar things that we're doing. But
and
it might
Jericho,
be,
maybe
they might want, and Jericho, yeah, of course. But it might be something that they can tag on to or find useful.
But you said Westford Stowe, okay.
So just a couple thoughts to kick things off. First of all, I'll say I've worked with Arrowwood a lot. I think they're a tremendous contractor of really good folks. I've heard several of their townwide presentations. They are excellent and engaging and really fun to nerd out. They are scientists. They speak with a more science language than I do. Not saying that's good or bad. It's what they do, and they're in a spot where they need to be seen as credible and experts and professional, and so they speak in using that professional language, and that's absolutely appropriate for them. I don't.
But you're credible.
Well, that's where the green vest helps give credibility, so I don't have to speak in such professional language. I'm not comparing us, I'm just saying they're different routes in terms of how you present that information.
Yeah.
So they are the source, and they can speak to that methodology, and so if you do decide to engage them in a presentation, I think that's great. They're absolutely a credible source. But you also, the word celebrate, like this is worthy of celebration. And so many of the things that they've found are worthy of celebration. And so what can you do to not just have this be a report out on the science, but a celebration of different aspects of your town? And to that end, I wonder, is this a one-time report out? Or could you make this into a series, 2 or 3 separate talks that get at that are all celebratory, that are all getting at different aspects of what's in here? And Sandy, I totally agree with you. Do not talk about what's to come. The idea here is to celebrate what you've got and to bring everyone along with what that stuff means. And so to that end, even bringing in the planning commission too early,
just have it public.
have it public, and I'm sure members of the planning commission will attend, but you don't need to single out that, and the planning commission is here to bring this to regulation. Because, you're not at that stage.
Yeah.
You just have this inventory done. Just take the moment to pause and celebrate the heck out of it and bring your people along. So, if you were to do a 2 or 3 sessions focused on the inventory, maybe you have Arrowwood.
Careful, don't, if you have to look when you pet, or you'll get slashed.
Oh, good. Nice. I've been a cat person in my past. I'm recovering.
Yeah.
Maybe you have Arrowwood do one of those and talk about the methodology, and maybe tell some stories about being in some forest and somewhere, and bring it alive that way. And then maybe you have 2 more that are told by lay people or whatever, just translated a little bit out of the science language. Maybe one of them focuses on sort of pattern and context, and maybe the other one focuses more on specific natural community types, to dig in a little bit without getting too technical and sciencey.
And we would have to make sure, if the first one is very technical and sciencey, that we don't lose people coming for number 2 and number 3.
Right, maybe you don't even do them in that order.
Do you think there's value to doing the technical sciencey one for a certain segment, like the commissions, but not the public, or should the public see the science?
I mean, it's not impossible to understand what they're saying, but
it's more dry.
It's a little more, the language is a little more dry. If you don't know what the word riparian means, they're unlikely to explain it. They're absolutely going to explain what a natural community is. So I'm not, I have nothing but respect for them and their work, and their presentations are really fun for me, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
I love it.
Yeah, I
Right.
can't wait.
But I
I
can
love it.
imagine, this is their presentation.
Yeah.
I mean, here,
Yeah.
reading this, and, I had to look up words, and I had to ask questions, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
And that's the tone of the presentation, is that sort of technical. But I mean, they love doing inventories. They're rooted in towns in Vermont. They've served on conservation commissions. So they clearly, that air of celebration will come through. But I'm just warning you that it'll be technical for somebody right off the street.
I love the idea of a series.
It's a great way, like, Dummerston. Patty Smith did the inventory. She's with, I can't quite get it. Her nickname's Peaches. Anyway, I can't get it. Anyway, she's with some environmental ed center down there. So she did the inventory for Dummerston. And then they immediately started talking potential regulation associated with different zones identified in the inventory. And
Ouch.
it blew up. And not only did the townspeople question the regulations, they questioned the science. And I think it set Dummerston back maybe 10 years. It was just like their credibility was shot. And they had to go back and defend their science again and again and again. And that just wouldn't have happened if they'd taken some time to do a victory lap of the inventory itself. So I know there's efficiency, and I hear that, and we want to be efficient. We don't want to waste time, but we also, might get more bang for your buck if you really,
So one of the things that I keep saying I'm going to do, but I never have, but now it might really work, is we have a number of people in Underhill who are sort of professionals, right? Well, Keith Thompson owns property.
Right on.
Well, we have Don Toby, we have Jen Pontius,
Yes.
who lives here, Marjorie Gale.
We have resources.
Bernie
Pienka, is that how you say his name? Amy and Brian Pico from Water Quality.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Sawyer. Okay. So, what if we have them read the report and be part of this celebration series where they can go, okay, I'm a geologist and here's the really cool things that I found. In my town, yeah. I don't know if they'll want to be part of it or not, but even if they don't speak, we can all, we can glean their understanding from it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, super fun. I mean, to have locals, but again, you just really need to stress, don't use your professional voice.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yeah, I know.
Jen is so fun to talk to. I've heard her present and I didn't understand a word. I mean, my failure, not hers.
Well, maybe you two could confer, all of you who know these people could confer on that and decide which ones might be the best ones to tap into. And Jens, I want to ask you just a question that Sandy said something that I thought was, you do it well, and I've heard you before, and it's that you put things into a larger context. Do you envision that at all in this series, or is that something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. And I mean, I'm happy to be involved in to whatever extent you want. That absolutely. I think the connectivity map, I spent a long time looking at both the townwide and the circuitscape one, whatever they call that one, the block to block, that's what they called it.
Yeah.
I spent a long time looking at those, and that is that larger context. But they didn't present it that way because they need to be inside the box of the town boundaries. But I I do those sorts of talks all the time, and I'd certainly be happy to put that in a larger context. You know, for Underhill, you have north-south blocks, several of them, with roads in between. And so
Yeah,
the east-west
absolutely.
connectivity is much more difficult than north-south connectivity.
Right, on our map, it's Westford is to the west, right? And then
Mhm.
Stowe is to the east, so that's part of the,
Yes.
and wasn't there a 3-town consortium that got this done with 3 towns? What were those towns? That was
Jericho, Bolton, Richmond, wasn't it?
Jericho, Bolton, Richmond, so that may
Oh.
not play into, but I wondered if other towns also had studies done, if, not to give you a lot of homework, but if we can somehow,
No,
Incorporate.
so Jericho and Underhill worked with Matt Colin and Jesse Moore in 2009
Oh, yeah. Karen
to
was a-
2011. And you all did community science mapping, and then Matt and Jesse did a couple rounds of early GIS. So this connectivity mapping is really the most recent. So that 3-town consortium, there were several different layers of that. One was this science to action project that didn't involve Underhill, but we tried
oh,
mightily.
yeah, right.
But then Underhill and Jericho worked together with Jesse and Matt. I don't know who the third town would have been there. It could easily have been Bolton, but
Okay.
Well, I think what you were referring to is the natural resources inventory, right? Did
Oh, so
Jericho
that's
and Bolton and Richmond
yes.
work together on
Yes.
it?
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, so
So-
that was science to action was that
Okay.
was called.
I was just wondering if this is our report, is there one has Westford done one and Stowe done one and Jericho done one that we could sort of connect the maps or
No.
dots? No.
Jericho has one. Jericho has an Arrowwood one, and they now have a natural resource overlay district that they've formed around that inventory. Stowe does not. Westford does not. And who's to your north?
Cambridge.
Cambridge does.
Oh, yeah?
Cambridge started maybe with UVM Spatial Analysis Lab.
Oh, cool.
So it was very remote sensing-y.
Yeah.
It was back in Dave Capon days.
Oh, a while ago.
Yeah. So Westford has a new town forest. That's been their big thing. Stowe is interested in these issues. They have the Shutesville Hill Wildlife Road crossing on the Waterbury-Stowe town line. So they talk a lot about connectivity in Stowe. And there's a new executive director at Stowe Land Trust, Tom Rogers,
Oh.
who used to work for us.
Hmm.
So there's definitely opportunities with Stowe. Westford's they're on these issues. They really are. And yet, they've been very local, focused on that town forest. So Cambridge has a very active conservation commission. I'll actually, Justin Marsh used to serve with them. They are the political director for Vermont League of Conservation Voters of the Vermont Natural Resources Council.
Justin is?
Justin.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, your neighbors are active in this arena, and they all have CCs.
You've got a good database in your head. Yeah.
That's all I got. I got that in enthusiasm.
Oh, that's cool. All right, well, let's see.
Yeah, so that first step of the outreach to the public, I think that's a great first step, and really making that public. maybe then, after it's very public, maybe then go to the boards.
Yeah.
And you can do more specialized, because hopefully they've heard the public ones. They've heard it once, maybe a few of them have.
Yeah.
They've heard it once. Then you can get more, not just technical, but more specific to how the inventory overlaps with their world. And that's usually the problem with the jump to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Is they see the data, but it doesn't come alive for then what they're supposed to do in their universe. One of the things we've done, and we did this for the Science to Action Project, we've done this for the Mad River Valley, was to take the inventory and explode it into pieces and reform it into a map that has 3 tiers. Priorities for planning: a primary conservation area, a secondary conservation area, and a tertiary conservation area. So you're not doing any new inventory, you're simply taking the parts of this and you're reforming them based on sensitivity. And so that primary area is going to be small, and you would want the highest standard. Thou shalt not develop. No, never, ever, no. But it's a relatively small area. Rare species, wetlands, floodplains, the known wildlife road crossings. Those are things that you would put in that primary. The secondary would be, really important natural communities, the buffer around those primary road crossings, other features, talus, maybe you put talus for bobcat in the primary, but other the what do they call it? The significant sites for wildlife or something. You could put those in the secondary, and then tertiary would be like the part of the forest blocks that haven't been identified in the previous 2. So you can take the same elements that they've presented, reform them into a heat map, and then give that to the Planning Commission and say, here, this is the same inventory, but we're showing you what's most important, needs absolute protection, secondarily important, and tertiarily important. And so that way they can attach standards to those areas, regulatory standards, or some sort of protection mechanism. And it's not, this inventory is wall to wall. It covers every inch of your town. What is a planning commission supposed to do with that? It's scary. And so then to figure out what to do with it, they have to go deep into the inventory to understand what's important and what's not important. And then they think a salamander or a moose. I don't know which is more important. There isn't one that's more important, right? But that's how they see it, and they shut down. And so, something like that, a tiered ecological prioritization, is another potential next step in terms of interfacing with the Planning Commission.
Jens, does it always have to be that primary is, well, you said absolutely needs protection. In another statement, you said absolutely no development. Could primary be something that you want to, instead of no development, that you want to develop in certain ways, as in you want to create underpasses in this area, this is a primary area, or you want to create opportunities for viewing a wildlife from the appropriate distance, or you want to create an amphibian crossing or something? Is that, because you aren't talking about, it didn't seem like you were talking about actively doing something with those areas, but instead not doing anything with those areas. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. But so we're talking about dealing with the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And so the Planning Commission, their purview is, where do you want development in town?
Okay.
Or where are the least worst places for development in your town? And so to interface with the Planning Commission, they need to know where they shouldn't develop,
Mm.
where, as you say, you could develop in some ways, and where it's absolutely fine to develop, or, you know, it's the least worst.
Yeah.
So that's what they're interested in, is that pattern of, well, where should development be? How can we cluster development into villages and hamlets?
This is human development,
Yes.
basically, we're talking
Yes.
about. Okay.
And yes, they are planning for whole communities. There's all sorts of other things that are involved in that. But I think the most important piece here when we're bringing an inventory to a planning commission is, what are the implications for development?
Okay.
Because that gets to private property rights, that gets to people's incomes, you know, livelihoods.
Yeah, and what you're talking about then is the presentation to the Conservation Commission, which could be a reshaping of this also into, you know, different conservation and management strategies.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Recreation, we could do the same thing.
Yeah, right. From different angles, the report from different angles, right?
How you interpret it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The implications of this from a recreational standpoint are, you know, here are some cool places, here's some cool forest blocks to visit. And also here's some parts of those forest blocks where we shouldn't visit.
Right.
You know, both are in that inventory.
Right.
How much of a challenge is it to do that reshaping? Is that something you're accustomed to doing, or is that something we should do together with you, or how
This
does-
map, you mean this map, this three-tiered map?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've done it many times. I'm happy to do it. It's not a big deal in the sense that it's not technically that difficult, because the data's here. And we have all of the GIS data on the Arrowwood SharePoint site.
Yeah.
So, you know, in terms of the mechanics of it, it's very easy. The question is, it's not a purely ecological decision either, right? How much do you want to push is going to be the question that I'll just keep asking, you know, during that mapping process. Like, okay, well, do we want to put all wetlands in the primary? Yes. Okay, do we want to put all wetland natural communities in the primary? Well, that's a much bigger area. Like, maybe you say yes to that one. Okay, do you want to put, you know, and I can just keep going. And so at some point, that primary area gets a little big, and you start thinking, ooh, that's getting to be a larger area. And so we're there. It's not just an ecological discussion. It's also one of, you know, how far can we go? Where's the town, where community values at with respect to these issues? Is that a priority for our townspeople? And at the end of the day, you all as a town commission answer to your townspeople.
So is that what essentially Jericho's natural resources overlay is in
Yes,
some ways?
yes. They did it in an interesting way. They didn't do it as tiers. They did it element by element. So like each element has its own sort of set of rules, which is, you really need to drill in, yes, to figure out what elements are in your property, and then what are the rules associated with those.
Was that Aaron's mapping of that? What we
The
looked at with
14
Aaron?
categories? I don't think
When we
that
want
was it.
That was not.
No, I think
Oh.
it's different.
This one, like, Jericho found using the entirety of the habitat blocks to be too much. So they used the higher elevation portion of the habitat blocks as their secondary, effectively their secondary. So, you know, that's an example, like ecologically, I don't think that has any justification whatsoever. I would say the whole habitat block has, is worthy of protection to that level. But it was like, how far can you go with community value?
Jens, is that by any chance, for the towns you've done this for, is that written anywhere
Sure.
that Huntington chose to include this, that, and the other? Is that all in your mental database?
No, it would be on each of the maps. So, like the Mad River Valley, you've actually seen that Mad River Valley map.
Yeah.
In one of the environmental leadership trainings, I have a link
Right.
to it. So that's on the legend of the map. Is in the primary are these elements, in the
Okay.
secondary are those elements.
Okay.
So the Mad River Valley map is a, I mean, I have the website. I can just give you that link. The science to action ones, that's so Jericho, Underhill, no, Jericho, Bolton, Richmond, Huntington. Those, I did one for the full four town area, and then I did separate ones for the towns. So those are going to be on my computer somewhere, but I don't know that those are terribly public.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, so to answer your question, long way of answering your question, I think it could be pretty quick. It's not that technical. It's just going to be a lot of the Goldilocks test. That one's too hot. This one's too cold.
And I think what the planning commission has asked us to do is to make a recommendation, and then it'll be up to them to make those choices. So my suggestion is that we do that level of it and come up with what we want to recommend, and then then they can take it from there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Arrowwood is very accustomed to my doing that, and they certainly know that that's a useful way of taking inventory and bringing it into the planning world.
Yeah, I think, we were sort of looking for them to do that part. Well, they haven't prioritized these forest blocks. And, that was frustrating, but knowing that you're available to do that is really helpful.
Right, but they can't, because it is that Goldilocks,
Because you have to be interfacing with the community for values and.
Otherwise it's their values,
Yeah, oh, okay.
I see.
I mean, but there is prioritization in here for sure.
Yeah.
There absolutely is.
Timing wise, I do remember asking you in one of the courses I took of yours, what are the best times to have community involvement? And maybe it was indoor community involvement, and you said the shoulder seasons are best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today seems like the shoulder season, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's been my first time in long sleeves in a long time.
I hide my long underwear this morning in the drawer.
I had my scarf on this morning.
I was on the lake for 4 days with my older son. Came off the water yesterday, and we had 87 degrees.
You were sweating.
It was intense, and then it turned. We had 50-mile-an-hour winds, and it was intense.
Oh yeah, it was the turn.
So there's a couple of things that weren't covered totally in this report that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of, and that is the iNaturalist data.
Yeah.
Which we have quite a nice list for Underhill. And all of the wildlife sightings that the town had done. There was a little bit of a hint of it in there, but we have an incredible map of where people saw things. So
is that a paper map, or did Arrowwood do that as one of their products?
No, well,
they usually do an
it.
online version.
We ran out of time.
Okay.
So did they put it in there?
They did.
Right?
They did. Yeah,
that's right.
they did. You typed out all the data.
That's right.
They put it in.
Okay, so it's not necessarily in this report, but it's
on their
even
site.
that,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Appendix or-
And I was pleased to see that they did reference it a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, in here,
Mhm.
and to validate some of their sightings and.
Well, that was kind. It's tough to know what to do with
Mhm.
community science
Sure.
data. It's very tough. You know, like when I use community science data, I don't use it unless I have 3 or 5 years. Usually it's wildlife tracking data. And if a town's been at it for a bunch of seasons, then we can start using it.
Yeah.
If it's 1 season worth of data, I won't touch it. There's just no way of knowing what to do with it. Because some of it's going to be right on, absolutely correct and insightful, and some of it isn't.
Right.
Yeah,
But it is engaging.
it is
It is.
engaging.
But the celebration,
Mhm.
you know, if you have a celebration, it's total fair game for that.
Yeah,
You start with that. And even some stories from locals on when they saw that animal.
yeah. Patty collected a lot of that in person, and she heard a lot of stories.
As I wore my rabbit ears, right? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, should we get down to nuts and bolts of sort of a timing of when we want to do these things?
Is there a phase 3 in the works?
No.
What
Okay.
would phase 3 be?
I just noticed there were no RT&E. I didn't see an RT&E section in here, rare, threatened, and endangered.
No.
So I was just curious.
Okay.
Yeah, we never really considered that as a possibility.
Yeah.
We know there's a lot on Mount Mansfield already, a lot of data
Yeah.
about that. Yeah. I don't know. That seemed like it was
Forgive
good.
me, I didn't mean.
No, I know.
Inventory's never done. You know, it's never ever done. So it's, you have to draw the line somewhere. I
Right,
totally
and we
understand.
got a lot of pushback from landowners that didn't want to be involved at all. And I think if you had mentioned that, it
Oh, yeah.
would have been a real
Oh, yeah.
bang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. That's helpful to know. I just wasn't sure if there was more coming down the pipe. So I haven't spent enough time with like how fine do they get? Because they usually have these special habitat features like talus areas, forested wetlands, deer yards.
Yeah.
Okay.
They got the,
Great.
Bear-
Mass stands.
yes.
Great.
Mass stands?
Yeah, they.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, hard mass.
Yeah.
The bear wetlands, I didn't realize how much bear used wetlands, so.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That was pretty interesting.
Wildlife habitat elements. That's what they call them.
Yeah, there's really a lot of interesting things in here.
Ledge, talus, cliffs. Yeah. So those are, those are the sorts of things where we need to decide, primary, secondary, sort of.
Is there,
Uh-huh.
I was just gonna ask, is there another town that comes to mind that has done a celebratory series upon, I'm not good at inventing the wheel. So, or
Yeah.
reinventing the wheel. Has anybody else done it that we can look at what they did, or I can research, how successful their kickoff was, or?
Yeah. Well, the Science to Action project there in 2012,
Okay,
we did a bunch of walks and talks. That one we did as Arrowwood was doing the inventory, we did these celebratory walks and talks. So it wasn't sequenced to have the results of the inventory be the substance of the celebration. But who else?
Yeah, we kind of did a bunch of walks a few years
That
ago.
was great. We did that
before.
every year.
I know, yeah.
I'm blanking on a good example of towns that
What
have taken
about,
their
like,
inventory.
Is it Bradford or Fairleigh, over in there?
Yeah.
They did, the mapping. I don't know how they used it afterwards, but we stole a lot of their
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
as far as how they did the inventory, but yeah. I don't know how they rolled it out.
Yeah, in Fairleigh Town Forest, they sure did mapping work there. Bradford, I guess they must have. I can sure put you in touch with Nancy Jones in Bradford. She's the chair of the CC, and
I mean, you just gave us a concern right at the start about a poor rollout, or rollout that didn't work,
Yes.
that backfired.
yes,
So I'd like to make sure that a rollout doesn't backfire. So it'd be great to see a successful rollout or talk to people about successful rollouts.
well, I again, if you celebration that doesn't mention regulation and speaks English and gets at these issues, I think is successful.
Okay.
So,
But you just had another idea that I wasn't thinking about. So I was imagining we're all upstairs in the room, we advertise it, people come, but walks and talks.
yeah,
You know, like that's a
yeah, you could go to one of these forest blocks and walk around with an expert who's showing different plants. Look, this is maidenhair fern. It's a sign of enrichment. What does that mean? Oh, okay, so this is the bottom of the slope, and so all those nutrients are coming down. Oh, so this is actually a rich northern hardwood natural community. Oh, and this shows up in the inventory as a subset of that larger northern hardwood forest. But because of the location on the bottom of the slope, it has this really unique plant community. So you could visit some of those spots, some of those particular natural communities, and it would come alive. And I mean, there are enough state lands that even if you didn't want to do that on private land, there sure are options in Underhill. But so that's absolutely a way of making this come alive, as long as the presenter has read the inventory and can make the connection, like this plant, this maidenhair fern, is related to this natural community, which shows up in your inventory as one of these locally significant natural community types.
Have to do it before the snow.
Yeah. Or, you do tracking. When the snow does come, you do tracking and like, hey, this bobcat is heading east-west.
Oops, and there the bobcats in the road.
You don't see a lot of bobcat roadkill.
No, fortunately.
They'll go through tunnels. They'll go through really dark holes. So.
Well, I know one time we had Tina Heath come out to the creek and talk about the wetland communities involved just in that. The problem is Route 15's right there. It's really hard to hear.
It'd be 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., right, would be the only time.
So is that the creek?
Yeah, the creek's in there.
The river is.
I didn't know what they were referencing.
Oh, okay.
I had never heard it called the creek.
Well, the river itself is called the creek, and so it's just sort of.
It's the wetlands around the creek.
There's no named tributary though there.
The tributary name is the creek. Yeah.
On the maps, it says the creek.
Oh. That's a new one to me. I was trying to figure out where the heck is
But isn't
the
that
creek?
exciting? It's 3.5 miles long of wetlands. That's very
Yeah,
exciting.
it's pretty neat.
And I think Tina Heath, that would be really great to celebrate that somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so interested in the wetlands because I don't know very much about them. But I think you know, having a wetland talk would be great. Having one forest block where maybe there's several things you could see in one place. That would be another pretty easy one, I think, to put together, given all the forestry people we have here. And what would another one be?
Wildlife tracking.
Probably, yeah.
Wildlife tracking a little later on. Yeah. So it could be, you know, fall into what, one a month kind of thing, or?
I mean, the more the merrier, in my opinion,
Yeah.
but it's like you're a question of your capacity.
Yeah.
Sandy, I think that was so successful the other year when, I don't know who it was who did that. It was Conservation Commission or Planning Commission who put on that series. And I
We
think-
did, yeah.
I think it was, oh, you guys did it? So I think it was really great to have this series. It seemed, in my recollection, it was planned out and
Right.
it was periodic. And so I could plug into them. But I did wonder, I think they would be easy enough for older people, getting older, to get to, but we might also just need to consider making certain, at least some accessible, you know, easy enough for different age groups to
Yeah, well, I mean, you could also
Participate
have an indoor one, where, you know, with lots of pictures where the,
Yeah, I think in some ways there might be like a first celebratory indoor meeting where like make sure that there's a lot of buy-in and we get a lot of people there. Because not everyone's gonna want. So if you go out to a field, so we can
Right.
say like, you know, on these certain dates, we're gonna sort of look at these more closely. But this is what kind of, whether Arrowwood presents it or Jens Elvis or whatever it is, but this is what the results of the report are. These are the things we should celebrate. These are very unique features that we find in town, have maybe some pictures and be like, this is what it looks like. Maybe you've seen it in your backyard, but you've never recognized like, oh yeah, look at all the nutrient-rich soil, you know? I just think
That's a good idea.
kind of like a big kickoff would be
yeah.
a good way to get like more people involved. I think
Yeah.
like having a nice event at the town hall with maybe some food and some like, you know, whatever.
No, I think
And
that's a good.
being a planner, I think it's always great if you were to have that big kickoff and you actually have everything planned out so that at this, you know, day, this day, this day, this day, everybody, rather than check your front porch forum kind of thing. You know, I like if it's already done.
And I would also have a couple of consistent messages that you hit for each of the walks. So, I mean, so we've been talking about wetlands today, and we saw these cool wetland plants, but remember, you know, these are wetland natural communities that are part of this bigger inventory. And you know, and just sort of leaving that breadcrumb trail of like, yeah, we had an awesome walk in one particular place, but this is, you know, a wetlands hike that we have all over town and we see it in our inventory, you know, and just connecting those dots. And so that every single time you have one of those walks, you connect it back to the inventory and you say, yes, and this is emblematic of this community type that we see in our inventory.
I would like to be able to send out postcards that invite the whole town, because not everyone does front porch forum, not
Right.
everyone does. And it has all of these things, like you say, Penny, it's all planned out. Come to the overview presentation, celebrate, food, good time. If you can do these walks, here's when they're gonna be, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's all weather dependent, unfortunately, but.
And Sherry has all the information on how much that costs and how you do it and the like.
And while, you know, depending on your capacity, we can certainly work on the tiered ecological priorities
Yes.
map
Right.
concurrently.
Yeah.
And then, and so then when the celebration is over, you all don't need to switch gears to that. You switch gears to, and now we do the rollout to the planning commission.
Mm.
I will tell you, the planning commission is sort of waiting with bated breath.
Great.
Because so many other parts of the zoning
Yeah.
redistricting is waiting for this inventory. So I don't think the waiting until the winter is really what they want to do.
Yep.
Maybe we can condense the celebration a little bit more.
We gotta leave off the tracking and do some more fall stuff,
Yeah,
early fall stuff.
yeah. And I mean, we could still do the tracking, but, at least have some of this other done.
So how does, it can't happen concurrently? How do we segue from, let's see, we're introducing the public and having a consistent message and celebrating our natural communities with the public. And then we're also creating some map tiering for the planning commission. What's the transition between the two, or is there not? Like, what ends up, is it just so we're showing the public the value of all of these wonderful natural resources? The planning commission is working with you on this tiering and what's important, and making ideas, suggestions for what about this in importance relative to land development. And then down here, over here, they meet when we have potential planning zoning regulation changes. Is that how we're doing? So why can't it happen concurrently, or?
What's the planning commission working on? Is it zoning?
Yeah.
And what's the target date? As soon as possible.
We don't have a planning commission administrator, so we are floundering.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So you don't have a zoning administrator, or you don't have a planner?
Either. We don't have either.
Okay.
We used to
So
have one that did
usually
both.
you have a part-time planner as well as a part-time zoning
And they used to
administrator.
be in one job, and we don't have either.
Got it. Okay.
So the plan right now is that our town administrator, Brad Holden, is trying to work with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission
Yeah.
to have them hire someone that will help with facilitate the mapping, the rezoning and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. And part of that is that they need to update tax maps first, because that hasn't been updated. So it's all kind of in steps that will help this kind of dovetail into all of those things.
Right on. In Waitsfield, they got a subcommittee together. We were doing some forest block mapping. This was before the most recent Vermont Conservation Design update. So we still had that really coarse habitat blocks with the 30-meter pixels. Waitsfield wanted something much more detailed than that. So they made a subcommittee mix of the planning commission member and the chair of the Conservation Commission and me and the zoning administrator to serve as the subcommittee focused on the mapping. So that's another potential avenue for doing this tiered ecological priorities, is actually getting somebody from the planning commission to serve on it.
We have you and Karen.
I'm on the plan.
Oh, well, doesn't that make things
Oh.
easier?
Karen is the
chair of the
conservation.
conference. She's not
So
here
we're
today.
sort of
Yeah.
Got it.
yeah, we're kind of.
So this is sort of it.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
Kind of how the mapping, this committee was formed, right?
Right,
Originally was.
Right. It was the
members from
same
both.
concept, only we don't have that GIS person
Got it.
here.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so having this committee work with you on that
Yeah,
is perfect.
yes.
Yeah, I just don't know, like, you don't want to get into the rezoning kind of mapping stuff, right?
Well, it depends.
Yeah,
I mean, if this could lead to
good conservation.
good conservation, I'm absolutely happy to be involved. It sure is easier when you have a planner.
Yeah,
And the idea of having a part-time person or a person from CCRPC who doesn't know the town
Yeah, I know.
doesn't seem like it's going to bear fruit.
yes, but even if we hired somebody, the person does know the town.
Right.
Let's say we hire internally from Underhill, and
Towns
how
are
lucky is that?
towns are scrambling to find planners. They're just all over. It's really intense.
So I like the idea of hiring you.
Yeah, doing you.
I'm free.
For whatever you got.
I'm free.
Is there someone, Jens, that, or have you ever seen this model that we don't actually hire a planner that will satisfy our town needs right now, but we just hire somebody in an advisory capacity for this purpose only?
We're out of my league, out of my
Okay.
wheelhouse. I can't speak to that sort of like effective municipal governance and what the models are there. That's beyond where I should be talking.
Okay, could we go back for just a minute? I
Yes.
didn't explain well my question, but just if we have if we bring the public in and try to create enthusiasm for these wonderful resources that we've just found out about, and we're also looking at prioritizing for regulatory prioritizing, on the other hand, with a committee, where do they end up meeting? Can it not be done concurrently, or where do they end
I
up?
think you've forgotten another arm,
Okay.
and that's the Conservation Commission.
Oh, yes, right.
Who can take all of that enthusiasm and work with landowners on, oh, you want to know how to manage for that? Here's some resources. You know, the kind of using this as like a tremendous reward
Yes.
for all those landowners who have all of these incredible resources. And well, you want to know how best to take care of it, or you're interested in conserving it, or, you know, what are the options for landowners that have these things? And
So if it goes from public celebration and conservation interfacing with the public, can't the sculpting of the map and the possible regulatory results be done at the same time? I mean, can't we roll this out, the celebration, have our every once a month for 4 months or something, and can't this other mapping thing happen at the same time? Does that happen?
It can. I just you just need to give your people time to understand the substance of the outreach, like that these things are important. If you know, that's just, it's important that they hear multiple times from different avenues, you know, what these issues are and what they're important and why they're important. The idea that your planning commission is prioritizing the most important stuff to be brought into the town planning process shouldn't be radical. But
I see.
But could there be feelings that they're being suckered into regulation? Yes. And so that's the feeling that's the only reason to keep them separate.
Right, I see.
Is so that people don't feel like, wait, you're just telling me this is all celebration, but you're actually trying to regulate from the back door. And so just to avoid the perception that you're trying to trick people.
I see.
That's, but you know, the idea that the planning commission has to prioritize the results of the inventory, that's not radical. You know, that can be said straight up.
And that's what was asked of us, right? I mean,
What's that?
that was what we were asked to do.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
like-
I just feel like it takes so much time to do things that who knows how long this mapping and
Exactly.
planning, this could take 3 years, you know? So
I
it
know,
seems like
I
to
know.
try and get the public enthused here so that then this can take place is gonna be, I just can't imagine. Okay.
Okay, so we are in August, and what do you think, like, when should we shoot for this? I mean, it's gonna take a little while to plan and get,
I guess we need to figure out who would we want to present,
yeah,
whether it's Arrowwood or
Oh,
Jens or
both.
right, or
Both.
both, or. Right.
Jens, you gave a presentation here before that, where you started with the big picture. I just wonder if you were to give a presentation like that on, I don't know, conservation design, is that too politicized? I don't know, but just the idea that you're able to then throw out a lot of the terms that are part of this, but in a very, I don't know, pictorial way that allows people to understand it better.
Jens, that was a spectacular presentation. I remember it even, and that was.
Forgive
how many
me, I
years ago?
don't.
Oh.
I remember being upstairs.
Yeah, one of the slides I remember that you showed was that slide that I've seen since, that as you become more urbanized, your wildlife
Oh,
becomes
yeah.
smaller,
Yeah.
smaller. I was so, it was such a beautiful display of it, like it really made sense to me that I hadn't really thought about
I
before.
wonder what year that was.
Oh, I'm sure I can find.
I
can find it.
can tell you in a second.
I wouldn't,
Anyway, I'm
I
happy to do
wouldn't
that.
want to get into a lot of those types of
Yeah.
issues, because it's a celebration. So
Right.
here, let's celebrate what we have in Vermont, and here's how we describe these natural communities, and yeah. And then if Arrowwood talks about what they found, I think it would be easier for
2019?
everyone to understand. 2019.
Yeah,
Really?
June of 19 was the planning, I met with the planning commission.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
they did. But a conservation commission was there too, and yeah.
I think that would be great. I think if Jens gave his common or plain speak and his broad context.
Maybe, there's also something to be said for having Arrowwood do theirs first.
Do theirs first,
Because they are
the contractor.
they're the contractor, and so having the contractor report
Yeah.
out, I don't know. I gave you that caution about language, so I don't know, but that's something to consider. You know, it would be awkward to have me speak
Okay,
first and then have them speak. But
And now here's what you paid for. Arrowwood.
yeah, I mean, we sure could do it, and no one, they've got, they're not offended.
I can see Jens following to give the context of what they just said as I'm sitting there thinking, what did that mean? You know, I can see that, but I can also see Jens kind of pulling people in at first too. I don't know, you have a thought, Ryan? What would be better?
not particularly.
But I think both of them, I think both of them at the same kickoff meeting would be great, I think, if they wouldn't be insulted, if Arrowwood wouldn't be insulted, or you wouldn't be insulted.
Sure, but
I think that'd be lovely.
do you think both Jeff and Aaron would come?
I don't know, it was Jeff your main point of contact?
Well, we started with Michael.
Yeah,
And he did the plant stuff, and then Jeff came, but I think Aaron ended up sort of administering it all
Okay.
in the end, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who our point person was in
Right.
the end.
I don't know, I've heard all three of them speak at different times, so I don't know.
Yeah, we heard Aaron, he was good.
Yeah, he was, yeah, he was very friendly.
Okay, so I'll talk with the Conservation Commission and make sure we can get funds to have Arrowwood come.
Right.
I'll see what their dates are like, in, September, are we looking at?
I'm gone almost the whole month of September, but I'm here for a few days, so I can't help out too much in September.
Okay,
If you need me to help out, it'd have to be October, I think.
we have, September is harvest market, which is really all consuming for quite a few people. So maybe early October, we'll do the kickoff. And
Concentrate events in October and November.
yeah. And in the meantime, I can contact Tina Heath if you think that's a good idea and see if she might be willing to do
Well, I think, I don't really know any of those people very well, though I enjoyed talking with Tina. I think maybe you and Ryan and Jens would maybe know the best people who speak comfortably and the public relates to. I'd let you guys
Okay.
think about that.
a,
I shouldn't be a part of that decision.
I mean, Ryan, you're a good speaker too.
I'm just wondering,
Who's the new Chittenden County Forester?
Yeah, I haven't met them.
He's not when I met him at a covered cooperator training, and he was very quiet.
Okay.
Oh.
Very, very quiet.
so
I really just couldn't imagine him in front of a crowd, but,
certainly
Sort of
different.
the opposite from
Ethan's
Ethan.
for sale.
it was,
Huh.
he seemed really like a great guy, and I just,
I mean, Dawn is in town.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and we could also see if Keith wanted to do it.
Yeah.
He used to be the Chittenden County Forester.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't want to do that kind of thing.
he's
anymore.
really busy.
Yeah, I know.
It's really hard, but if you ask.
Right. I might twist his arm. Who are these?
He is a taxpayer, so maybe he'll be more inclined if. I'm trying to scour my brain. I'm just trying to think of people in town.
Well,
We've got-
Sherry Morris is in town too. Do you know her?
I don't.
She's the president of the Vermont Land Trust
Really?
and a professor at UVM.
Wow.
Hmm. Yeah, well, why don't I start with Keith? And if he can't, I mean, Don is really good in the woods with people.
Yeah.
Not sure he knows a lot about natural community mapping and some of that, which you probably want to know if you're kind of presenting this report. But it doesn't have to be someone from Underhill either.
And are you talking about speakers for the kickoff
Walks.
party? Oh, for the walks,
Yeah.
okay.
So party and 2 walks probably is our time frame.
I
would
think
say.
so, yeah. Any other suggestions? For a forest kind of,
You were talking about a wetland one and a forest one.
yeah. Oh, Stacy Pomeroy,
Stacy's
she's
so awesome.
amazing. She gave a presentation to the planning commission and it was incredible. But she would have to do it about 5 more times until people could see how to use that, But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think there are a
she's
lot of folks at
available.
DEC. Stacy's incredible. There's some of the wetlands, the wetlands office. I think there's some great speakers in there. Shannon Pitlick, who's she's she floodplains or she wetlands?
I don't really know her, but. Well, I'll dig around and see what I can come up with there. And maybe we can have a call and you're gone soon?
September 1st.
Okay, well, I'll get right on it then. And we can and maybe Karen has some ideas for that too. So we're doing a kickoff, we're doing a couple of walks, and yeah.
And we're thinking kickoff in October.
Really,
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll take a look at my schedule and put the idea of the tiered ecological priorities in the queue.
Okay.
And then we'll need to schedule a couple of meetings for the Goldilocks test.
Okay.
Thanks, Jens.
Yeah, thank you.
Great help.
Awesome.
So a lot to talk about in that report. Good. Well, thank you for coming
Yeah.
today. And, anytime you want to just join us online, you can do that too.
Oh, yeah.
Try to do the.
Yeah, for those meetings, that might be
Yeah.
easier even.
Yeah.
And actually, if all of you are in front of your computers, it's even
Yeah,
easier
right.
still.
Everybody
Oh, okay.
rather than just you.
Right. I mean, if it's a Warren meeting, somebody has to be here, but it would be easier once one person, it's just, in terms of seeing maps like that,
Mhm.
I
it's just
see.
easier to do it as a.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, well, great to see you all.
I better close the meeting though. Huh?
Yeah. These been running all night.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Have a good night, folks.
Thanks, Jens. Take care. Safe travels home.
I motion that we adjourn our.
I second.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Thank you very much.